Welcome everybody to the second day of the ERSA conference, which will take place virtually, as you know. It's a pity, but at least we can have interesting sessions today. I'm chairing this session. My name is Jouke van Dijk and I'm from the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. In this session, we have two presentations. One by Dr. Mafini Dosso from European Commission JRC, and one by Pierre-Alexandre Ballard from University of Utrecht. We start with the presentation of Dr. Mafini Dosso. I don't know if many of you have already participated in this type of session before, but you can we can have interactions by using the chat function. So please, if you have any questions, then you can type them in, and after the presentation, we will try to answer them as good as possible. We have a strict schedule of 90 minutes, two presentations. That means 2 times 45 minutes. Therefore, I suggest that we start as soon as possible with Dr. Mafini Dosso. She is, as I mentioned, for the European Commission from the Joint Research Center. She is originally from Côte d'Ivoire and France and holds a PhD from the Sorbonne. And about her work at JCR, I think the best way is that she introduces this herself, because it's related also to her presentation. So please, Mafini, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Jouke. Good morning, everybody. I'm very pleased to be invited at this first ERSA web conference. And as Jouke was saying, I'm working at the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, where I'm leading the project called Smart Specialization in Innovative and Informal African Economies. Since we have started the activities since now 3 years. And it's a cooperation led by the European Commission Joint Research Center, where we focus on the cooperation on smart specialization strategies as place-based innovation strategies with countries in Sub-Saharan Africa. So my presentation, of course, will address this issue and the different progresses, and I'm happy we got a good news yesterday. The different steps we achieved since 2000, let's say 16, 17. So I will now start sharing my screen if the chair is okay.
Yes, please do.
Okay. Very good. Now you can see, I hope. Perfect. So designing smart specialization strategies with Africa. As I was saying before, it's a project led by the Joint Research Center, especially by the Unit B3 Territorial Development of the Directorate Growth and Innovation. We are based in Sevilla, Spain. For the people who do not know what the Unit B3 Territorial Development is, focusing on the analysis and evidence for policy for territorial development in the EU and through international cooperation beyond the EU. The Unit B3 is well known because it's also the unit hosting, as you can see, the Smart Specialization Platform, which is the platform where you have the different regions and countries' priorities and different tools for analysis for territorial development. So the Smart Specialization in itself program started at the beginning of the years 2010, and it was a program launched jointly by the Joint Research Center and the DG Regio of the European Commission. So let's go directly, and you will understand the concept through the presentation. Let's go directly to the issue we will address today. So I'm focusing on a particular region, the region of Sub-Saharan Africa, meaning that I'm in charge of the smart specialization cooperation, scientific cooperation for the Sub-Saharan African region. So we're not covering all the countries, but we are developing different type of analysis on the different dimension of the concept with different countries and other African organizations and institutions. So as in Europe, we also see even in fast-growing African countries, that inequality are strong across the countries, but also within the countries. And the inequalities we observe in the geography in Africa is, of course, the product or the conjunction of many forces. Especially here, the circumstances in which someone is born, for example, either be in a rural area or in a urban area, or from uneducated parents, or for example, in a remote area where we have less facilities for water, for electricity, or even for access to hospital. These different, let's say, aspects can explain part of the inequality we are observing in terms of opportunity, which is the extent to which the different circumstances I've evoked dictate a large part of the outcome among the different individuals. And I spotted this report from the World Bank because the data are based on the survey and of a combination of different surveys analyzing the causes of inequality, and among them the causes of spatial inequality, which of course come of the different, which of course causes different type of inequality, whether it be economic, social, or even environmental, in terms of environmental stress the population can face. So we have an hostile environment, economically speaking, socially speaking, but in this environment where you have so many inequalities and very important gaps in terms of income across the population, it's also the same continent where you have we have noticed in the latest decade, especially, the rise of what we call the tech hubs, which are different kind of co-working accelerator or innovation hubs, or even incubators, where you have these young African people, these startups, digital startups especially, that come together and co-create with the different resources they can have in the continent and beyond, co-create to bring different solutions to the problems or to the challenge faced by the society or by the communities. So just to come back on that one, where we're saying, you see the title is Poverty in a Rising Africa. And at the same time, we had this, for those who have seen it, I think it was the front page of the Times magazine and also of the Economist, where there is this new narrative about Africa rising. Part of this narrative comes from exactly the emergence of what we call these local pockets of innovation dynamic. At the beginning, we had a paper in a forthcoming handbook on this. At the beginning, these dynamics were really concentrated in the urban area. And now they are moving towards secondary area. At the beginning also, they were more focused, let's say, on digital technology, even software application, especially with the entry of big firms like Microsoft, Google, etc. And now they are moving toward, for example, one case we analyze humanitarian fab labs, for example. So there is in this, let's say, very unequal environment, you have these dynamics that is emerging on the continent, and that is mostly led by the young people, also by the NGO or international donor funding. And the landscape is being structured in the sense that you have hubs of hubs, and one of the most famous is the one who co-produced this map, is named AfriLabs, where you have more than hundreds, I think now maybe there are 200 of hubs which are connected. And they're very specific because they are shaping this kind of innovation dynamics in Africa. So the smart specialization strategy enters here by looking both at the inequality in terms of the spatial inequality, and also these new dynamics of innovation, plus the different programs that have been implemented to support industrial innovation in Africa. Those one I don't have much time to discuss about it here, but you have to know that we have these two different trends that are emerging on the continent. So now let's go in deep of the presentation and of the concept that we want to talk about. So the outline is quite straightforward. So it's an African Union European cooperation for smart specialization. So it's towards this cooperation. Of course, the cooperation is not fully established, but we are already having a discussion, especially with the African Observatory of Science, Technology and Innovation. So the smart specialization is backed up politically speaking, but the joint effort of the African Union and the European Union to come together to bring innovation, new solution as a driver or as a solution to our different challenges. The second part will address more what if we were thinking about the concept as we know, smart specialization, putting ourselves in an Africa STI policy concept. And the last part, we focus more on the concrete application, meaning on our work, the exploratory activity we launched in Rwanda, in East Africa, in Central Africa, and the analysis we are running, for example, on countries in West Africa, such as Nigeria and Côte d'Ivoire. So I think it's important for you, because maybe many people do not know about what is this framework for the African Union, European Union cooperation. We can go back more than 10 years ago to the Joint Africa-EU strategy, but just to tell you that there's the story, and there's been a different, let's say, roadmap that have been co-created both by the African Union countries, member states, and European Union member states. Let's start by the Abidjan Declaration, because it marked also our first, let's say, our first conceptual work in the flagship report of the Joint Research Center. So the Abidjan Declaration and also the new European Consensus of Development 1 year, that came from 1 year later, and now the new EU-Africa proposed partnership area, they have in common that they put a strong focus on these young people. So we often say that Africa is the youngest continent. Africa is the continent with the highest share of youth population. So there is this double focus both on the youth and both on the science, technology and innovation. In Europe, we would say research and innovation. In Africa, we still use the science, technology and innovation, let's say, labeling. So there is this focus both on the youth and both on the opportunity for achieving a more sustainable development in terms of economy, in terms of social, and also in terms of environmental, let's say, development. So you have these frameworks where you can think about how you can set it up a cooperation around the concepts such as smart specialization. And in the report I put in the lower part of the graph, this is a report that was jointly made by different units of the Joint Research Center, and it touched to many different areas, to the various areas of cooperation, and to what are the knowledge and the tools produced by the JRC in partnership with different African organizations and institutions. And I was personally involved and led the chapter on research and innovation, where we also already mentioned the possible opportunities for achieving smart specialization cooperation with our African partners. So we are going toward the smart specialization strategy in Sub-Saharan Africa. And if this has to be done, it has to be done, of course, in line and in consistency with the International Development and Cooperation, which is the Directorate DEFCO of the European Commission. And at the very bottom of the chart, for those that do not know, I thought it was important also that you know that Africa has an agenda. And the agenda, it's called Agenda 2063. And this Agenda 2063 has 20 goals, which of course relate to the sustainable development goal coming from the UN Agenda 2015, Transforming Our World. And if you can see now what I'm putting on, I'm adding on the bottom of the presentation, for me, as a scientist leading this line of investigation of science for policy work, those are the different steps the important step that we achieve through the years to be able now to support and to implement or start the cooperation fully with the African countries. So one of the first major events was on the territorial innovation policy and smart specialization. And this is where we kicked off the discussion, and we had the partnership of some institutions such as the African Observatory of Science, Technology and Innovation in Equatorial Guinea in Malabo. And we had the report. We also had the opportunity to deepen our cooperation with the OSTI through smart specialization dedicated session at a joint course which is provided by the African Union OSTI and the university, the UNUMERIT, the UN University Merit. Last year, we had another important panel where we had, among other representatives from Rwanda and also from Tunisia. And this has based also our program, which we kickstart in last year on smart specialization in innovative and informal African economies, the case of Rwanda. So this is a bit the framework. I'm sorry, but you have to understand that there is a whole policy framework. If you want to bring a concept such as smart specialization, we touch both at the knowledge production and management and about innovation, but also at the policy or the governance of innovation. So as I was saying, the new proposal for partnership, which will be discussed in the next Africa EU summit in October. I don't know if it will be virtual yet, I assume so, but there are five areas of partnership that are proposed. You can see here from green transformation to the access to quality energy sources, transformation, digitalization of the processes, of the administrative processes or of the production processes or other aspect of the digitalization, mobility, access, etc. You also have the partnership in proposed along sustainable growth and job. We touch both to SDG, if you know, 9, industry and innovation, but also decent economic work such as SDG 8, or SDG 12 production pattern. You also have a proposed partnership, of course, in peace, security, and governance, and in the thematic of migration and mobility. And these different partnerships are better explained and detailed in the joint communication I'm referring to on the right-hand side of the graph. So what are smart specialization? They are place-based an innovation-led transformation agenda, which enable to achieve, let's say, more sustainable territorial and industrial transformation. And these kind of strategies put a strong focus on the territorial component, on the differences that you can see within also, you can observe within also, within the border of a country. And they are led by innovation in the sense that we push the discussion, the dialogue around finding new solutions that can help to solve the challenges that we observe in the specific places based also on the resources we have in this space, primarily, of course. And this kind of strategy, I expect at least to contribute to 3 of the partnership, priority partnership area in green transition, digital transformation, and sustainable growth and job. And they also intend to help and support for the achievement on sustainable development goal, which are our global ambition for development, adopted in the General Assembly in 2015 at the UN. The second part, smart specialization in Africa STI policy concept. This is where we start thinking about, okay, we are innovation policy academics or scientists, and we have to think about how such a concept or the governance principle of such a concept can be tailored or adapted to the African context. So we published, and that was the good news. Actually, I'm very happy because the paper was finally accepted by the African Journal of Science, Technology, Innovation and Development, based in South Africa. the paper addressed exactly the issue I'm talking about in this presentation, and they made available already the DOI, and the paper will soon be published. And there we say, okay, on the left-hand side, you can see that you have Science, Technology, and Innovation Strategy, which is the STI strategy of the African Union member states. So we looked at in these different documents, and of course other documents of the literature on innovation policy in Africa, and we try to single out the different challenges they mentioned that have to be overcome for the innovation policy to be appropriately designed but also implemented. So I'm not going through the different challenge of the IP implementation, but the exercises we did was to match this conceptually challenge of IP implementation with the principle of this place-based and innovation transformation agenda called Smart Specialization. Take an example. In the STI innovation strategy for Africa and subsequent background document, it is said that the evidence for innovation policy and the monitoring and evaluation mechanism of innovation policy in Africa are still very limited and should be reinforced not only in terms of collecting the data, but also in terms of how do you think, how do you design the collection of this data. In the Smart Specialization framework, we have this approach that you will see further on, where we map first the evidence about the potential of the city, of the region, of the territory where we want to implement a support for innovation or new entrepreneurial activities. And similarly, we have in the latest, let's say in the latest 20 years, we had many African countries that have adopted design, what we call science, technology, and innovation policy. Often what you notice is that either they stop at the level of the design of the strategy, or the design of the strategy is not consistent with the way you implement the strategy. So again, in the approach we use in Smart Specialization, we try at the same time to account for the link between the design and the implementation, doing that by relying on what we call the entrepreneurial discovery process, which are kind of multi-stakeholder dialogue for the priority, the innovation priority selection. And we keep on different challenge of innovation policy implementation in Africa, where, for example, they mentioned the fact that they need practical steps. Practical steps are needed for the successful implementation of the strategy. Of course, in every different African countries, you have more than 50 African countries, you will have different steps for the implementation of the strategy, or at least they will take different patterns. But in the Smart Specialization framework, there's also a step-based approach, which was done also because the region that was originally for the region in Europe did not all have this, let's say, potential or capacity for innovation policy governance. Now, when we think about smart specialization in the African STI or an industrial policy framework, we think about how do we select the research and innovation priority for sustainable development. Okay, I have the agenda, I have the priorities, often defined at the sectoral level, which may not be the most appropriate way to do. And how do I operationalize my research and innovation policy? How do I then exploit my research and innovation potential locally, and also the one that I can access from outside my innovation system, to address the specific societal challenges I have in my community or in my society, in my place? So you have different steps of the smart specialization processes. There are the official steps, which are normally 6 steps, but here we detail more for the people also over there to understand how we process when we do the smart specialization, when we design and want to implement a smart specialization approach. So very quickly, a first step will be to collect the evidence. So this evidence will touch upon which are the economic strengths and weakness of my territory, what are the scientific and research potential, not only in terms of universities, but also in terms of international projects, international publication, joint scientific activities, etc. What are the potential in terms of innovation? And in the framework of smart specialization, the innovation is of course either technological or non-technological. It can also be social innovation or other type of innovation. We also have to map the societal challenge that we have on the territory so that we ensure that the priority domain we will select will be decided through the matching of my territorial potential and the societal challenge or the business needs I have. Smart specialization relies also on different level of, let's say, interrelated governance. You need a strong leadership, of course, for innovation, which I think this is why we went, in addition of the interest, we went also studied the experience and the exploratory activity with Rwanda. So you need the high-level coordination, which is in the inter-ministerial coordination. You need also a more local regional coordination that is connected with this high-level coordination. And thematically or not, you will set it up entrepreneurial discovery groups, which are groups that combine, we will see different elites of the society to decide about the innovation priority domain. Smart specialization, we rely on a specific policy mixes. Doesn't mean that here at least you have to do new policies, but at least that you have to be clear about which policies we support these different activities. So the mapping also includes an institutional mapping or an innovation policy mapping. As I was saying before, smart specialization rely on the quadruple helix, which is the combination of the dialogue between the business part of the business pole, the research and education, the public administration, and the civil society. And such a process intends to reveal the needs and the challenge of the business and of the society, and to be sure that the decision, or at least to ensure that the decision that we take together about where we will invest about innovation come from a kind of consensus, a kind of reason, collective discovery. So we expect different kind of impact on smart specialization, the strongest being that the innovation governance rely on a set of evidence that is collected regularly and that allow to the discussion within the EDP groups to be based on. We expect also that the transformative innovation projects are better selected. So what you have already often in Africa is that you select the sectoral level, which may not be the most appropriate because what is addressing your issue are more the combination of different sectoral or different technological knowledge. And the last part, designing smart specialization with Sub-Saharan Africa. So the project is a project of the European Commission, and this first part of the project is funded and supported by the Joint Research Center Exploratory Research Program. So the exploratory activity I'm running with my Rwanda-based fellow is called Smart Specialization in Innovative and Informal African Economy. It was also important for us and to put forward the fact that being innovating doesn't depend on the fact that you are in a formal or informal environment, and Africa is a witness of this. And allow to show that we can be innovative also in an informal economy. Doesn't mean that we encourage the informal activity because often they are not protected by the law of the country because they do not exist in the statistics or in the business registered, etc. So the main objective of this exploratory activity was, of course, to broaden the awareness about smart specialization next to different actors and different institutions in the Rwanda National Innovation System. And you will find on the left different detail, the summary of this workshop. And the summary you find also in annexes, all the different type of institutions that have attended and participated to this first workshop. We are now running an international report with other Europe-based researchers and also researchers and scientists in Rwanda. And we had the support for this workshop of the Ministry of ICT and Innovation. And I'm not sure whether they are representative here, but I would like to thank them a lot, because thanks to them, we have been able to touch most of the key organization in the innovation, national innovation system of Rwanda. So it's smart specialization in Rwanda or in Sub-Saharan Africa is also about enabling this multi-stakeholder dialogue for research and innovation. There are already multi-stakeholder dialogue in many African countries. There are already interministerial cooperation, especially with the Sustainable Development Goal agenda. This went faster actually. And two important objectives of the activity were, of course, to launch a smart specialization activity in full smart specialization strategy championed by Rwanda in East Africa. And we expect that with this experience and with the analysis we are achieving in West Africa, we can touch other African countries. Again, the key objective of all this exercise is how to bring the innovation potential of African entrepreneurs, the innovation potential of African firms to address in a better way or in a more efficient way the challenges that are faced by their place and their communities. So we had discussion about in the workshop. This was the picture is from day 2 actually, and we had discussion in the workshop presentation about smart specialization from people in Kenya, from Rwanda, myself, and also from a deputy head of unit, Fernando Hervas, from the Unit B3 was also present. And we asked them to gather by different groups in a World Cafe setting and identify the challenge and kind of activities they will see as smart specialization activities. And I'm not going through all the different activities, but it was very interesting to see that they already understood and adopt the non-sectoral perspective. It means that they understood that the issue was not about selecting sectors, because there were already national headlines in Rwanda. If I remember well, there were agri-tech, health tech, and fintech priorities. So they understood that it was not about choosing the sectors, but about choosing the activities. And if you see here, these activities, most of them will combine knowledge from a sector, can be agriculture, pharma, or biomedical, with in general digital technology or information and communication technologies. There was also this convergence of views about the fact that smart specialization as represented, and we've been discussing with Rwanda peers for now 2 years, there was this conviction that smart specialization could unlock a lot of room for multi-stakeholder dialogue, which is much needed for allowing a bottom-up selection of innovation priorities and activities. Again, we can go further. We went further in thinking more about what Faure was categorizing, Dominique Faure, as the different structural change outcome: modernization, diversification, radical change, or transition. And we start thinking about, for example, in the case of the infantile malnutrition in Rwanda, how the knowledge or the technology for food processing, the different organization of agricultural or farmer cooperative could be combined to address what is considered as a societal challenge in the place. We can do the same for the people that do not know Rwanda. It's a mountainous country, so they can also combine some knowledge to address the specific challenge related to mobility or transport in this. And of course, the market is far beyond Rwanda itself. Just to finish the last slide is an exercise we did also with Côte d'Ivoire in West Africa, where we look, of course, at the possibility of upgrading the value chain, but also at the possibility of opening new paths or new avenues to think about how to transform or to produce alternative products. Ivory Coast is the first producer of cocoa in the world. This is about 40% of the international, of the global market, but many things can be produced. Use the cocoa pod either in terms of fertilizer or here in terms of food item. Cashew nut is the same. And Ivory Coast had some, let's say, overproduction of rubber. And this rubber can be used, for example, in an asphalt or rubber-based asphalt or concrete, meaning for paving the roads in the country. And if you think about these different activities, they are important opportunities, especially in a context where you have a high volatility of agricultural or commodity prices. So smart specialization is opening a different, let's say, dimension, different windows of opportunities for the governance of innovation policy that is taking into account the specifics of places and of societies and of local communities. Smart specialization is allowing for a mobilization through multi-stakeholder dialogue and is also opening new avenues to think about industrial development and industrial upgrading in Africa. So the cooperation is set in this direction, and we hope that we can have further academics also helping to conceive and to conceptualize the different aspects of smart specialization in the African context. What is sure is that we already have important interest from different African countries and different African organizations and institutions, and this us academics to make it real and to make it conceptually strong. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mafini, for your very interesting presentation. I suggest that you switch now from the slides to your normal screen, and we have some time for questions. I received one question via the chat, and that's from Carolina Guevara Rosero. And she asks, to achieve sustainability, governance is a key factor. And can you say something about the main challenges for the governance in Africa? Because the concept of smart specialization, it's not easy. We see that in Europe, but in Africa, it might also be complicated. Can you reflect on that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Yeah, okay. And thank you very much, Caroline, for the question. Yeah, of course. In the same paper, we discuss about the challenge of applying smart specialization in a context such as Africa. But at the same time, we have to take into account that there are already STI plans that are made and already innovation funds that are designed at the national level, etc. So the question is, do we wait for the governance to be fully efficient, or do we already step in and try to help this governance to be improved on the basis of some of the principles we know? So there are already innovation funds that are available. There are already science, technology, and innovation strategies in Africa. The problem is in the implementation. And as Caroline pointed, the problem is in the governance. And this is where we try to bring some of the support through smart specialization. So of course you will have bottlenecks, but what we understood is that it's important to gather the people to discuss about what is innovation and what innovation can have as an impact. And I think smart specialization will actually help or contribute to foster the governance, at least in what concerns the science, technology, and innovation. As I said, governance is one aspect that from which we want to bring the smart specialization in Africa, but also as academics and as scientists, we have to think about how the STI strategy are implemented in Africa and how the governance can be improved. And to do that, you need conceptual framework. So we do that with the smart specialization, bringing this conceptual framework. But I want to point something, I couldn't mention it in the presentation. We do this following two at least line conceptually, 2 or 3. So there's a smart specialization line. But what we did also is that we are doing a cooperation with, for those who know, the TIPSI consortium, the Transformative Innovation Policy Consortium. So we had other conceptual papers that are coming because we understood that we need also ourselves academic to be coherent in going to Africa. So this is about academic or conceptual coherence. So we also integrate the lesson we learned. I'm an innovation system academic. I'm coming from the National Innovation System background. So we also try to pull from these different theoretical framework in with one objective, improving the selection and the funding of innovation of science technology in Africa. And the second dimension is the dimension where you go with policy coherence, and I like you mentioned sustainability. So the second aspect of, let's say, our way to Sub-Saharan Africa is that we also try to make it coherent with the existing global European and existing global agenda. So this is why we already integrate the sustainability, or what we call policy coherence for sustainable development, in which we are also conceiving the smart specialization approach with Sub-Saharan African country. Lastly, we don't do it alone. Most of the works we are doing, 99% are done in cooperation with African scientists, in cooperation with African research organization, in cooperation with African STI stakeholder. So
thank you, Mafini. Thank you for this. And I have one more question, and we have room for one more from Andre Torre. And he is wondering if these policies are also applicable for rural and peripheral areas, or is it mainly for the urban areas, because I think that's an important issue. So you have a couple of minutes to answer these questions. Please
okay, this is not a, thank you, Andre, and thank you for following. This is not an easy question, but I will escape this one. And I have, in the handbook we are doing, some other people in Kenya are thinking about how smart specialization could help in fostering the cluster in agribusiness, clusters in agribusiness in Kenya. So it seems that if you don't take the whole concept, you cannot take the whole concept and plug it to Africa, you cannot. But you can take inspiration for different dimensions of the concept. For example, the authors are from Warsaw University and other based in Kenya, are thinking about how to implement this multi-stakeholder dialogue in rural or peripheral area. Again, we call it smart specialization is the full concept, but think that some principle, because they are pragmatical, can be, of course, implemented in a rural area. And in rural area in Africa, we have a tradition of conversation, a tradition of dialogue. So it may be the innovation concept that will be difficult to implement, but may not much maybe the mobilization aspect of the concept.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think now we have to move on to the second presentation in this session. So thank you very much for your very interesting presentation about how smart specialization can be usefully applied in Africa.